Jazal did not feel well, not well at all. It was not simply the vile nausea that the letters on the doors had somehow created. It was more, a lurch of sudden shock and disgust, like picking up a cup and drinking, expecting water, and finding something else inside. Piss, perhaps, in this case. That same wave of ugly surprise, but stretching out over minutes, over hours. Things that he had dismissed as foolishness or old stories were suddenly revealed as facts before his eyes. The world was a different place than it had been the day before, a weird and unsettling place, and he had infinitely preferred it the way it was. Hey guys, welcome to my channel, Redhead Reads. So today I am going to be talking about Joe Abercrombie's The Blade itself, the first book in the first Law trilogy. Now I am really excited to get onto this one. If anyone follows me on Instagram, has been seeing my updates of this, you'll already know, spoilers, I really enjoyed the book. So yeah, I'm going to get into a little bit about what I loved about this book today. Most of this review is going to be spoiler free, but I'm going to add in a small spoiler section later because there are two bits in particular that I really want to talk about. It'll be clearly marked in the timestamps in the description, so I'll let you know if you want to skip ahead of that. Right off the bat, I guess this is the first thing I want to talk about. It isn't really like a super plot-driven book. For me, the real joy of this was all about the characters. The characters in this book are amazing. There's almost no truly heroic people in this book. Like, so there are some that are certainly better than others and some that are worse than others. But I think Joe Abercrombie, he's got the kind of vibe that this is a real world and people suck and people do good things and people do bad things, and we're a combination of the two rather than heroes and villains and good guys and bad guys, and I definitely gravitate towards those stories more. If you've seen my The Lies of Locke Lamore review, I talk about my love for that book, and that was one of the primary reasons in that as well, because I talk about how Locke and co just felt like real people, and that goes double for this. I've spoken a little bit about The Blade itself in one of my reading vlogs, but I can get a bit more in depth here about characters like Glockta. Now, Glockta was a soldier that went to war. He was very popular. He had great prospects, a great career. Everything was going well for him. He was captured by the enemy and tortured, and he came back disabled. He struggles to walk. He has to have a cane. He's in constant pain every day. The first time you meet Glockta, he actually explains his journey down a flight of stairs, which I think from so many authors, that could just be the most boring thing in the world. For example, when Tolkien describes going through the Old Forest, I've mentioned in my vlogs that I didn't love that it's slow and it's tedious. But Abercrombie uses this as a moment to help you connect with Glockta and empathise with him and sympathise with him and understand his pain and understand who this person is before it then goes on to show you that he is an inquisitor and he tortures people for a living. This is all within the first few pages of Glockta's first chapter, so it's not a spoiler. He is a pretty ruthless character, and he's pretty cold, and he's just brutal, basically. But what I love about it is that Abercrombie lays that foundation for why he is the way he is before you really learn about this stuff, and it just makes you connect with Glockta in a way that I just don't think you ever really get to with a lot of, evil characters. I wouldn't actually refer to Glockta as evil, but he definitely does a lot of evil stuff. Logan is arguably the main character in this, although Logan, Glockta and Jazal all get a lot of chapters. There are multiple perspectives in this book. There's quite a few. I think there's 5 main ones, but there's definitely at least one more that has like a few chapters, and there's like little bits here and there. The scope of it is really building like this huge world with a lot of characters, and Logan is probably the closest we have to a main character. He's a northerner, which is like a completely different part of the world from where Glockta is, and he's had like quite a dark past, and he kind of regrets it in a lot of ways, but he's kind of willing to do what's necessary. I wouldn't refer to him as a hero, but he's definitely trying to be a better person. And you get a lot of that in this book about people who are one thing but want to be another, and it reflects a lot of our real life struggles where we want to be better people and we want to improve ourselves, but sometimes we just can't. Sometimes we're bad people and we do bad things. But I hope I've got my point across about why these characters feel so realistic, because they're simply just so complex. Now, I said earlier that this isn't a plot-driven book. That is not to say by any means that the plot is bad. It is, however, a little bit slow-paced. So if you're a really plot-driven reader, you might struggle through this a little bit just because the characters kind of have their own stories going on. Similar to A Song of Ice and Fire in a way, you kind of jump about to different characters who are going through their own struggles and their own problems. They don't really explain what the plot is in terms of like their main plot, because there's so many different plots going on and you don't really understand how they're connected until later. So it's kind of hard to give you like a synopsis about what this book is about, other than it's big. It's big in scale and they're definitely building towards something huge, and I'm super excited about that. I would actually recommend this to fans of A Song of Ice and Fire. I think maybe it's the closest series I've read in terms of tone. It definitely has that depth and darkness to it. And also, similarly to A Song of Ice and Fire, the magical elements of the book are very in the background for most of it. And although we definitely do see magic and there are magical characters, they're not at the forefront, at least not in this first book. There are hints of where that stuff is going to go in the second. I'd be really interested to see what you guys think of it, actually, because I can understand why some people might not be into it, but for me, it's one of the best books I've read this year. And it just felt so solid, and I'm just so excited to see where they go in the sequel. And this is one of the books that I enjoyed so much. I bought the sequel before they hanged. I bought it before I'd even finished this book, because I just knew I was going to carry on. One thing that disappointed me a little bit, I guess, but this is just me, and it was the same with Liza Lochlamora, is that there's no map in the front. There's no I did find one online and I actually used it as a reference, and I would recommend that to people reading this book because it's so character driven that sometimes those little bits about where places are and who's in which part of the world can get a little bit confusing at times, to be honest. So I got up a little map on my iPad and I kind of looked through it and I was like, right, I understand where these people are, and you know, some of the political situations and things like that made a lot more sense as soon as I got the geography in my head. I don't know if that's just the kind of reader I am, but I would recommend that to anyone reading this book, way more than I would for Liza Lochlamora. I get why the map wasn't in that, it wasn't really important. But in this, the world building is really interesting, and they're setting up different parts of the world and different cultures, but also he's left a lot of it unexplored, and I'll be really interested to see if we get more into that in the sequel books. This is actually more than just a trilogy, because there are some standalones, and I know Joe Abercrombie just brought out a First Law book, so I'm really excited that there's just a load of these. And I've heard from my followers on Instagram all tell me that the series just has consistent quality and just remains great. So I'm probably going to blast through most of these next year because I enjoyed the first one so much. So yeah, I think this is about all I can say without getting into spoilers. So if you haven't read the book, do it because it's great. But first, skip ahead to my final verdict review where I'll explain I'll sum up my thoughts and I'll give it a star rating. But now I'm going to talk spoilers, so I'll mark it in the timestamp. Feel free to skip ahead if you don't want to know spoilers for the Blade itself. So I guess I'll start with the ending. Honestly, I didn't think it was like the best ending ever. It definitely doesn't have like an explosive finale. The book really is just about bringing these characters together, and they almost set up a sort of fellowship, and they're going to go on a journey, which, you know, with me currently listening to the Lord of the Rings audiobook, I'm actually pretty excited to see how this is done in such a character-driven and such a grim, dark style fantasy as The Blade itself. And I can't wait to see these characters interact with each other on a regular basis, because a lot of them don't even meet until later in the book, and when they do, it's just little exchanges, you know. And they've built up so many like things that are going to come into play. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Glocta's going to do in this other city, which we've never even been to, so again, it's more world building. But I actually really enjoyed Jezal's story. I think his relationship with Ardy West were some of my favourite scenes in the entire book. Mostly because we're seeing it through Jezal's point of view, and I guess in a way he is improving himself and he is becoming a better person and a little bit less selfish, but he's kind of doing it for selfish reasons still. And there's something a little bit twisted about his infatuation with Ardy West, because it doesn't come from a pure place. And I think he definitely has this vision of who she is and who he wants her to be. And I don't think that's entirely accurate. And Ardy West is one of my favourite characters in the book because they keep a lot about her hidden. And then, which brings me on to my next point that I wanted to talk about in the spoilers, which is the domestic abuse scene between Ardy and her brother, Major West. Because this literally comes off the back of a chapter where Major West has actually been a really good person. Like, I had kind of flashbacks of like Ned Stark in A Game of Thrones. Like, he's trying to be diplomatic. He's trying to see things from other people's point of view. And he's trying to put himself in their shoes. And even when he gets angry, even when he gets frustrated, he doesn't let any of that out. Well, for the most part, he keeps his temper. And he's proven himself to be a really good leader and a good negotiator. And he's putting in the work. And I think we really respect that about him as a character. Only for him to get home, find Ardy drunk, as she is for a lot of the book, and then for him to punch her full on in the face, it just shocked me. Like, I mean, the signs were there, I guess, but it built up this man and then tore him down in one chapter, and I just thought that was absolutely exquisite writing. Like, I loved it so much, and I think it was maybe one of the best parts of the book, even if it was one of the most difficult to read. As I said, Abercrombie has this gift of getting you to understand and like people that are completely unlikable. And I really, really hope we get a lot more Ardy West in the next book. I'd love to have her as a point of view character. But I guess we'll see when I pick that up. I wanted to briefly talk about Beaz and the magical elements of this book, because they're there really subtly and they come into play more and more. And I really like the idea of this character that has been around for all this time and knows so much about the world that is just lost knowledge now, or people laugh at it or think of it as myth. That sequence where they go into the tower with all these like ancient secrets and all this old magic, that's so my thing. Like, I really, really enjoyed that. And what I particularly loved was that is literally back to back with the Major West chapter that I just talked about with the domestic abuse. And it's a perfect example of how Abercrombie weaves in these real life feel with these magical elements and just makes them feel so believable. I know I'm just gushing with praise about this book, but it's literally one of the best books I've read this year. And I don't think I really need to go into it much more. Why? Because, like, if you guys are watching the spoiler section, you've read it, you get it, you understand why this is so good. Unless you didn't, you know, I mean, if you're really plot driven, you didn't enjoy it. But for me, it's just, I haven't felt this way about a fantasy book probably since I picked up, like, maybe my first Brandon Sanderson book or so. I feel like I've started something new that's gonna take me on a journey, and I've got a lot of it to come, and that's just so exciting for me. So I'll stop rambling now because I've already recorded over 20 minutes talking about this book. I'm gonna have to really cut this down. I'm gonna skip ahead to my final verdict. Okay, right, so that spoilers over with. I'm just going to talk about the final verdict. If it wasn't obvious already, The Blade itself by Joe Abercrombie, I'm going to give 5 stars. Yep, it's my first 5-star review on this channel, and I just couldn't think of a more deserving book that it goes to, because the way Abercrombie balances the magical elements and the real life brutality and the complex characters and the large scale plot and the world building, it's just done in a masterful way. And I would recommend this book to any fan of high fantasy, but particularly fans of stories with a lot of point of views and a large world and an epic scope. And especially if you love character-driven stories, then The Blade itself is the book for you. And you absolutely, absolutely have to pick it up. I can't stress it enough. And I'm really glad to finally be doing a review where I'm just gushing about a book and have pretty much no negative stuff to say about it. I cannot wait to get to the second one. I'm going to carry on this series. I'm going to carry on reviewing them because I just love talking about this book. And that's kind of why I started this channel, because I wanted to talk about things I enjoy with other people. So absolutely, if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please mark it with a spoiler warning if you're going to put spoilers, just because I don't want to ruin the book for people. If you haven't read the book, let me know your thoughts as well. Are you going to be picking it up? Do you think the way I've described it makes it sound like something you'd enjoy? Let me know below. And if you've enjoyed the video, leave it a like, maybe subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content, particularly with this series, because I'm definitely going to be doing more reviews of these books in the future. Yeah, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.